Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a lovely afternoon here in Nairobi. My name is Richard Kipngeno. I work here at Nature Kenya as a budding and membership officer, and I will be the moderator of this virtual talk that will be presented to us by Dr. Paul Webala. I welcome everyone of you who have really spared their time so that you can join us virtually as we indulge in the world of bats. I will encourage all the participants that we remain muted, and also to let you know that we are recording this presentation, and after we will upload it in our YouTube channel where you can always revisit whenever you feel like. And I will also encourage everyone that we share our questions, our concerns, comments in the chat box so that we give the speaker ample time to do his presentation. And later on, we will be able to sample all of them as after the presentation. So today's title of the talk is about emerging infectious diseases, bats being unfairly implicated. And our today's presenter is Dr. Paul Webala, who is a 2019 National Geographic Explorer, wildlife biology professor, an author, and an award-winning regional expert on small mammals, especially bats, with extensive fieldwork experience. Collaborating with scientists from around the world, one of his principal interests are the processes that drive rarity and abundance of mammals in natural and human-dominated environments. This research involves behavioral, ecological, and systematic taxonomic questions and is central to his work of promoting bat conservation in Africa. He has published extensively in reputable international peer-reviewed journals. He is a co-chair of Bats Conservation Africa, co-founder of the Global South Bats, and a science advisor to Bat Conservation International in USA. Together with colleagues, he has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for science, capacity building, and biodiversity conservation projects in Africa. He is a member of the bat specialist group of the IUCN Species Survival Commission. Webala has held positions at National Museums of Kenya, Kenya Wildlife Service, and currently he is a senior lecturer at Maasai Mara University. He is a research associate with the National Museums of Kenya, Kenya Wildlife Service, and the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago, USA. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome on stage our today's presenter, Dr. Paul Webala, to take us through. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you so much, guys. I'm happy that you are here. And I encourage people to mute where they are. I'm going to talk about animals that are much maligned, much misunderstood, much shrouded in history, and a lot of ignorance. We're going to talk about emerging infectious diseases and the fact that, I repeat, fact, that they are fairly, unfairly implicated, unfairly fingered. Now, today, there are 28 orders of mammals and over 5,500 species, over more than 5,500 species, because new species are being described to science. Is that a lot? Not really. Mammals are in the minority. Amphibians are more than that, 7,000, reptiles, over 8,000, birds, over 10,000 species, fish, over 25,000 species. But if you compare animals to other groups of biodiversity, over 350 described 350,000 described plants, and that dwarfs for plants, over for insects, over 1 million described insects. Now, bats range from a penny, 2 grams bumblebee bat found in Thailand, in Southeast Asia, to the largest vertebrate, the largest mammal, the blue whale, several elephants, because the largest mammal on Earth is a blue whale, order Cetacea. Elephants are only largest on land. Some of these mammals are terrestrial, like myself, the hyenas, impala, mountain gorilla from Rwanda, and rodents. Some of them are fossorial, means they live underground, subterranean. Some are aquatic, like the hippo. Some are arboreal, they live on trees. And yours truly, the only true flying mammals, like birds, they fly. They're true volant, so bats. When we talk about wildlife, often, and then especially in the context of Kenya and in Africa, people who have savanna, people refer to the mega fauna, the big five: elephants, black rhino, lions, the leopard, and Sneseras kafa, Cape buffalo. And often you have things like this. This is recorded from the Mara. Lions kill, they brought down a hippo. No, they brought down a warthog. But the warthog was not dead. And the spotted hyena came from nowhere. Over 30 of them, they chased out the 4 lions and took over the still alive warthog. This is what is described as wildlife in countries like Kenya. So we're talking about bats. They are part and parcel of biodiversity. They are part and parcel of food webs. They're part and parcel of food chains. And that's why we should care about them, because food chains are interdependent. It's just like a jack, just like a puzzle. Everything's better on each other. If you remove one, the system is likely to collapse. Now, bats play crucial ecological roles in that of fossorial ecosystems, subterranean ecosystems. They bring guano, their fecal matter, into caves, which is a main source of energy that moves out through the food web in the caves. They are also umbrella species for protection of such ecosystems. And that ecosystem include invertebrates, microorganisms, but also organisms that feed on them, small carnivores, raptors, snakes, that feed on those bats in caves. Now, bats provide critical ecosystem services to the health and the benefit of ecosystems and humans. And humans, I emphasize, including fertilizer. Now, guano. We don't talk about that. This in Africa. Guano has been assessed in Kenya Agricultural Research Institute, KARI, to have more nutrients in terms of NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium than the fertilizers we import, because we don't produce fertilizers here, inorganic fertilizers we import, it's rich in nutrients. If that can be harvested and used on farms, that's crucial. It's more richer than the manure from our cows in terms of nutrients, if it can be harvested. Elsewhere, it's harvested. In Jamaica, you see that show there. It's harvested and marketed as fertilizer, as fertilizer. It's richer than more manure. It's more than richer than manure. We talk about diversifying our tourist products. We talk about that all the time, but often we revert to old strategies, old ways of attracting tourists. Big five, national parks, and beaches. We talk about that, but it's easier said than done. Caves and bird-based tourism is a major source of income in many countries. In the US, at the Congress Bridge in Austin, Texas, and at a cave in Houston, Bracken Cave. Thousands of tourists flock those areas to see birds emerging when they go to forage. When they leave to forage, they go out to forage, and they pay thousands of dollars annually in terms of dollars to the economy in Texas. And this happens in Asia, but we don't do it here. There are a lot of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of birds in the caves along the coastal strip, and in tree roosts in many places along, including downtown Mombasa at Uhuru Park, and in Western Kenya in Mbale town in Vihiga County. These are areas that are going to be marketed for tourism. There are places there are places where they have no big five, but they make much more revenue from tourism than we do. Birds play lots of ecological roles: seed dispersal, pollination, insect population control. We'll talk about that shortly. Fruit bats are found in the tropics and subtropics of Australia, Asia, and tropics of Africa. Now, the African tree of life at Antonia digitata, the baobab tree, is called African tree of life because it supports life in the savannah. Now, this tree will not exist without pollination of fruit bats called largely Epomophras walbagi and Labiatus. The flowers open in the evening and close in the morning, and only bats, plus some primates called galagos or bush babies, 99% of by bats, can hover around those flowers. And by feeding on pollen of those flowers, they are able to move pollen from male flowers to female flowers, effectively pollinating them. Those trees and many other tropical plants, because fruit bats are found in the tropics, cannot survive without pollination by bats. Now, fruit bats as well that are found in the tropics and subtropics of Australia and tropics of Asia and Africa are dispersed. Lots of trees, tropical trees, their seeds are dispersed far and wide because bats feed on the wing. They're able to move their seeds from one side to another. And because they fly, their dispersal is different from birds or primates that drop their seeds beneath the parent plant. This is crucial, that these birds traverse areas that have been cleared of vegetation and drop those seeds there. And therefore, they help in forest regeneration, moving genetic material from areas parent plants and moving them across habitats that have been cleared of vegetation by humans, and therefore revegetating those areas. Very, very crucial ecological process and aided by humans. Unlike other seed dispersers that drop seeds beneath or close to the parent plant. That picture was taken from Kisumu Impala Park. That's a fig, Ficus natalensis. By feeding or carrying those seeds away from the parent plant, they drop the seeds, they feed on the wing, they drop the seeds away from seed predators that concentrate on parent plant and destroy seeds that would rather sparse far and wide. Now, economically and for human sake, and we're very selfish as humans, economically, so many fruits that we depend on, their seeds are either their seeds are dispersed by bats or their flowers are pollinated by bats. Bananas are of special mention here. Our domestic cultivars are propagated vegetatively. But domestic cultivars that we drive we get materials for improving our cultivars, domestic cultivars are propagated reproductively. So their seeds are dispersed by bats. Very, very, very important. Bats help naturally control populations of insects. Now, by feeding on insects, thousands of billions of dollars annually, and that's in the US. That's a study by Boyles et al. 2011. Are saved in the US, they don't really depend on agriculture, are saved annually in terms of avoided crop losses and avoided use of pesticides, because one bat can feed on 1,000 insects in 1 hour. These insects are pests. And by feeding off insects naturally, it's a natural subsidy. They naturally suppress the population of insects that would otherwise be pests. And in so doing, they save farmers in terms of losses of their crops because of pesticides, but also losses of having to buy or purchase pesticides. Now, some of these insects, like I said, some of them are not just pests, but some of them are carriers of pathogens. Now, these insects will be carrying pathogens. The bats are controlling those insects naturally. Now, if they control those insects, then it means the number of infections like mosquitoes, the number of infections from malaria are reduced significantly. However, despite the benefits that bats provide to humans and nature, they are vilified and feared. They are thought to be filthy and spooky as ghosts. And this is informed by myth and fears, largely because of ignorance, largely because of lack of information. And therefore, because of the fears, uninformed fears, misplaced fears, these benefits are rarely acknowledged. In reality, like many animals, I repeat, like many other animal species, bats cause many zoonoses of global public impact. Zoonoses are diseases that come from animals to humans. And this is not just unique to bats. It's also to many other animals. And we'll see why bats are unfairly implicated. Now, let's just look at factors that make viruses that jump from one species to bats, from bats and not just bats, but other species as well, and spill over to humans, livestock, and wildlife. One is that bats are the second most diverse group of mammals. Forget about lions, elephants, the big five. Those are in the minority. Lions are only 2 species. Elephants are 2 species. Bats constitute 25%, at least 25% of all mammal diversity. And they're not just diverse, but also in terms of trophic levels, they are diverse at trophic levels. Some are insectivores, 70%. Some feed on fruits, frugivores. Some feed on nectar, including frugivores. Some few are nectivores. Some few are carnivorous. They feed on other small birds, rodents, lizards, name them. Some feed on fish. And there's another myth, sanguivores. Sanguivores are birds for anybody that feeds on blood. There are 3 species of vampire, so-called vampire bats. 3 species out of the over 1,402 species that feed on blood. They don't suck blood. They lap, wanalamba, if I may use Swahili. They lap. They don't suck blood. And the 3 species are only found in Latin America, nowhere else in the world, not in Africa, not in Asia, not in Europe. They are only found in America. 3 species, and one of the 3 species, only one of the 3 species feeds on human blood, largely feeds on blood, called the Montus redondas. One. Others feed on animal blood. They feed. They have very sharp canines. They bite the victim who is probably roosting in the wild or resting in the wild. When the blood comes out, they lap. They don't suck. They don't suck their grams. They are weighing about 30 grams. So they can't suck somebody until they dry and they die. That's a fallacy. Bats are found all over the world, except very cold polar regions like Antarctica. But diversity, like most organisms, is around the equator. Our regions, biogeographic region, is called the Ethiopian region. So the high diversity is found in the neotropics, but also in the Ethiopian region. So around the equator, as we move away from the equator, diversity reduces for many reasons. I won't delve into that. So how many species are there in the world? 1,462 species, more than 1,460 species, because many areas are unexplored, and some species are hiding in plain sight. We just described 2 new species from Kenya. So more than that number you're seeing there. In Kenya, largely because of our efforts and some of our colleagues before us, over 110 species. Tanzania is one of 5. There's no expert. No, my student who is working on bats in Tanzania recently graduated at master's level. So Tanzania is probably more, but because there's no expertise there at the moment, there are probably more than that. Uganda, 98 species. Congo, very remote parts of Congo. I have a grant going to Congo to start bats there in the next 2 weeks. Over 117 species, with a lot of militia there. We're actually scared. Rwanda, we study bats in Rwanda. I have a project there, over 51 species. Now look at the USA, which is away from the equator. Look at South Africa. Look at South Africa, USA, and many countries in Europe. The diversity is much lower. And worldwide, like I said earlier, 1,462 species of bats. Now, bats are fingered because of the virus because they enjoy remarkable longevity for their body size. They live much longer in respect to their body size. Now, why do we care about bats? No, why bats are fingered have been pointed out to have more viruses than other organisms. The fact that they fly, they are volatile, and they are highly fragile. They fly around in search of food, and some of them make long distances during seasonal migration. Some of them are migratory, and some of them have different patterns of migration within some species. Some species migrate, some individuals migrate within some species, others don't migrate. And because of that migration habit, and because they are colonial, they're using aggregations, that may permit exchange of novel viruses or viral variants between migrating and migrating populations of conflicts. And because they root together, it means the viruses can migrate within individuals of the same species, also across species barriers. Now, I talked about bats often living or roosting in large colonies in caves or on trees, and within the same colonies or the same roosts, there may be multiple species, like in this case. Millions, thousands, tens of thousands or thousands roosting in the same cave. If they are roosting together and one individual is infected, that may infect several individuals within the same cave. Now, bats roosts in any many conceivable roosts. They live in many conceivable roosts. Some roosts in what Americans will call gringos, if it's Spanish, in shitholes. Pit latrines are referred to as shitholes. They roost in caves. They roost in buildings because we've naturally destroyed, we've destroyed the natural habitats. And some, like the straw-colored fruit bats, roost in trees. Now let's talk about emerging, so-called new wildlife-borne diseases, zoonosis. Today, so many zoonosis, so many diseases that emanate from wildlife to humans are a result of more resolution of lab tests and diagnosis. They are not necessarily emerging. They are not necessarily novel. They are not necessarily new. It's just that because we have greater resolution in terms of tests and diagnostics, that they are said to be emerging. They probably existed way before. Now, there's also a lot of investment in documenting more pathogens, more viruses. And that amounts to the risk of crying wolf. You document a virus like we documented one from Taita Hills called Bombali Ebola virus that had not infected humans. And the moment you publish that, people are scared. Without information, concomitant information about it, people will be scared that it will spill over to humans and decimate people. Very importantly, there is a lot of intrusion of humans into natural areas. Many remote and explored regions are still unknown to biologists, including disease ecologists and researchers. Now, habitat and biodiversity loss increases exposure and cases of seroprevalence. And this is aggravated by humans, exotic invasive species. And this promotes wildlife diseases. Now, the main driver of so-called emerging infectious disease, AIDs, is that it has one species, Homo sapiens, encroaching on natural habitats. Also, because we're producing, especially in the developing world, we are increasing our populations, women having lots of kids, which means we have more mouths to feed. So we are intensifying production, produce more food to feed many mouths. We are increasing our contacts ex situ into natural habitats, but also chances of spillover events is that today there's a lot of global travel. If somebody infected from Congo or Mount Elgon or a park that has Marburg, that chance of that Marburg spilling over and spreading, that Marburg, that disease, that virus called Marburg, that Ebola virus called Marburg, spreading is higher because of increased global travel. Now, many people are moving to urban areas, urban sprawl, and finally, human activities associated with experiments in the lab, biomedical manipulation. Now, these human activities are increasing interaction between bats, humans, livestock. They are increasing interaction between wildlife because viruses are not yet coming from bats. They are coming from other wildlife as well. Between that interactions between bats, wildlife, humans, and livestock are the main drivers of emerging infectious diseases. So they include encroachment of people and livestock into bat habitats or wildlife habitats, movement of bats from destroying their natural habitats from degraded areas into urban and peri-urban regions, increasing contact. Rapid global movement of people, animals, and products, including bushmeat, increases chances of spillover events. And trade and bushmeat, example, Ebola. We don't eat bats here, but in central parts of Southern Africa and West Africa, people feed on animals and tested. There's no public health initiatives that are able to test those. And that leads to spillover events. Tourism, people going into caves. There's a case of Marburg virus that happened in Mount Elgon, Kitum Cave in Mount Elgon, in the western part of Kenya. Tourism go there, and perhaps through the action without masks, they are infected. In 1981, there was a single case of Marburg virus, which is hemolytic, which is a lot of hemorrhage. You bleed a lot. And this German tourist died from Marburg in 1981, a single case from Marburg virus in Mount Elgon, but also Kitago Cave in near Fort Portal in Uganda. Now, animals being used like monkeys used for research without control can lead to spillover events and mining in caves. Now, the most serious threat, the most serious cases of spillover events is the fact that we're converting natural habitats, like that forest in Kakamega, into farmlands, maize farms. Now, when this happens, there's increased contacts between humans and wildlife. Also, because the animals are stressed, they shed of viruses that may not necessarily affect them because they have improved immunity, they have evolved with them. Those viruses are likely to spill over to humans and they mutate and become virulent become dangerous. What is happening in Mao? Somebody said rain is not brought by the forest, it's brought by God. Well, what's happening in Mao is driving populations of wildlife into human habitations, in human habitats, increasing chances, increasing contact, and that increases chances of flow events of viruses that are otherwise circulating in animals, including bats, and do not harm animals. And when they move on, they spill over, they jump species to humans, they mutate and become virulent and dangerous to humans. Now, approximately 75% of recent emerging infectious diseases have been zoonosis. Now, let me talk about One Health because there's a problem there. Now, successful public health interventions need the cooperation of human, animal, and environmental health partners. Professional in human health, doctors, nurses, public health practitioners, epidemiologists, and animal health, veterinary vets, agricultural workers, and environment ecologists, wildlife experts like myself. They need to communicate and importantly collaborate and coordinate activities. Now, this is not happening. I repeat that this is not happening because we work in isolation. And you can't address public health via knee-jerk reactions, treatment, without addressing prevention. Often people talk about public health, so on the ground, things are different. It doesn't happen. The vets are working on isolation. The doctors are working on isolation. To address these emerging AIDs, emerging infectious diseases, we need to work together to address the source, not the effect. The source. Prevention is better than a cure, they say. Now, disease, and I talked about that earlier, is only one piece of the puzzle. The chain parasite disease population outbreak is very complex and known. And for species, for viruses or pathogen to jump species, it's a complex process. Now, without looking at the ecological context, wildlife diseases, zoonotics are only partially understood. And often we treat the symptoms without treating the origin. We talk about treatment, not the prevention. Now, are bats unfairly fingered? Very, very true. New pathogens are treated as new pathogens. But the fact of the matter is they are probably previously undescribed. I talked about it earlier, undescribed pathogens. They were known to science. There's new diagnostics. There are new test kits. So new pathogens are not necessarily new. Finding a pathogen in a bat has been equal to bats being infectious. Not necessarily. There are lots of cases where there are pathogens like Bombali Ebola virus that's not infectious. So that's not necessarily true. Now, infectious bat has been equal to a bleeding outbreak. Well, Bombali Ebola virus was discovered in Taita. That was discovered in West Africa, in Sierra Leone, Guinea, are not necessarily infectious. They're not necessarily true. Now, an outbreak has been equal to cross-species jump to a pathogen, not true. The consequence of all these fallacies, misinformation, lack of understanding has led to direct killing of bats because there's not enough information. There's not enough knowledge to understand the origin and the spread of those pathogens. Now, let me talk about what is called credible science. We do a lot of experiments, myself included. Now, Anthony Simon, who is my friend, published a tale with colleagues, published an article in 2017, which reported or revealed bats having more viruses than other mammals. Look at it this way. They only compared 4 of the current, not 26. Today we have 28 orders of mammals. They only compared 4 orders of mammals. Now, they also examined almost as many bats as all other mammals were examined. However, two guys in 2020, they reported that bats have no more viruses than other mammals when all others were considered, because this guy is considered only 4. Now, there have also been a lot of media claims and exaggerated warnings about bats. Uninformed, misleading, not based on science. The bats are the #1 carriers of disease. Time magazine. The Wall Street Journal, for example, I'm just giving examples, that where will the next pandemic come from? Likely bats, not science. Now, on Citizen TV, our own in Kenya, bats have invaded a public park in Mombasa. Fears of disease outbreak. Now, that downtown Uhuru Gardens in Mombasa, bats have been there even before I started studying bats. They've been there. I started studying bats in 2002. I saw those colonies in 2002. That colony in Mombasa of so colorful bats called Eidolon scientifically. They have been there. Now, this species is migratory. They are found in cities and villages across Africa. Now, a journalist visits the park in Mombasa, Uhuru Gardens in Mombasa, which is under the National Preserve of Kenya. They see the bats, they interview a random visitor who has never seen the bats before. And then they claim an invasion. That is their home. They have been there. That is misleading. A very lazy journalist from Citizen doesn't inquire, doesn't go beyond what they hear from a random visitor who has never been there in the park. And they report that there will be a disease outbreak. These bats have been roosting in villages in Viga, in Bale, for ages. Nobody has died of any disease. Nobody has been infected from any disease whatsoever. They have been living in those places. That's their home. They are in Kampala. They are in Dar es Salaam. They are in Kigali. They are in Accra, Ghana. They are in Lagos, Ghana, Lagos, Nigeria. They are in Abidjan, in Ghana. They have been living there for ages. Nobody has died. And a journalist who is lazy and cannot go out and make an informed reporting, they report that there's fear for this outbreak. Now, this coverage, which is inherently sensational, not just in the media, but also in publications, is hindering bad conservation. And these headlines, such headlines, they magnify risks, perception, and this leads to persecution of bats, destruction of their roosting sites, and unfortunately, extermination campaigns. Now, these have led to that propaganda in the media, uninformed propaganda, have led to persecution of bats via persecution and killing of bats through evictions, closure of caves, and entombing of caves. These measures are counterproductive. It's a waste of time because it doesn't work. In fact, it increases chances if those bats have viruses spreading to other areas, because the bats will move away from their original roosts into human dwellings, into urban areas, and increases more contact. Very importantly is that when the bats, animals are stressed by persecution, destruction of the habitat, they produce and shed more viruses. Scientific evidence shows that, like happened in Kitaka Cave in Western Uganda, where scientists went there and found Marburg virus in 2007. And villagers closed the caves to the stock alert flu bats that had the Marburg virus moved to other areas. And when they went back in 2014, they discovered that the level of viruses had even increased, and the bats had spread to more areas, increasing chances of that Marburg virus spreading to other areas and more contact with humans, and therefore more cases of mortality. Now, if you see a picture like that, I've been studying bats for the last maybe 20 years, and I've been under roosts. I've been in thousands of caves across East Africa, but also in Australia, in the US, many other caves. I'll probably be just soil 6 feet under if that were to happen. So this type of pictures only aggravates fears among humans, uninformed fears that bats have viruses, that bats are dangerous, and this will lead to persecution and killing of bats, leading to more, if they have viruses, spread spillover events. Now, do bats make safe neighbors? Yes, because no outbreaks among bat researchers. I've studied bats for the last, I say, 20 years, more than 20 years. If bats were infectious, I'll be long dead many years ago because I've been bitten. I've gone into caves, thousands of caves. I have handled bats. I've been peed on. I've been bitten. I've been defecated on. I'm still alive. I don't look like I'm sick anytime soon. If I'm sick, probably it'll be malaria, not any zoonotic disease affected bats. Now, there are large bat colonies in cities, in Boston, in Nairobi, around like our restaurant. There are in Kampala, in Dar es Salaam. There are so many bat colonies, urban areas. There have been no major outbreaks from such colonies. Now, we don't eat bats in Kenya, but bats is eaten in southern parts of southern, most of Central and West Africa. Well, your guess is as good as mine. There are lots of people who have been dead for centuries if a bat had what people call as pathogens, if they are dangerous as people speculate, because people eat them. Now, there are a lot of people who mine and use guano, bat fertilizer, fecal material on their farms. Maybe not in Kenya, many places in Kenya. In Meru, people do it. In the South Coast, people do it. Lots of these people who interact directly with bats, they belong there. Now, what do you do if you're working with bats, you interact with bats? And if you work with bats like myself, be ready to react and respond to this and other applications that are alarmist in nature. Number two is protect yourself. Use common sense. If you're handling animals, use gloves and masks, but do not overdo it with those vet type of PPE. I think I'll end there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Paul Webala, for that insightful talk about bats. It's really been very informative and very educational. I open the floor to the audience. If you have any question, you can always send them through the chat box, or you can raise up your hand. We will give you a chance to speak. Going through the chat box, I see, okay, there's one that Stephen Pauls sent that he has a special interest in Mount Elgon and the bats in the caves on the mountain and the potential disease risks. You say something, Mr. Webala, about Mount Elgon and their bats and the potential disease risks.
I've been in Mount Elgon, if I may answer that, Steve. I've been in Mount Elgon dozens of times. We've sampled bats, we've handled them. There was a single case of Marburg in 1981. That is several decades ago. I go there, the only thing I have on me has been a mask. And well, of course, a mask with gloves. I handle bats with gloves. So the fact that I've been Mount Elgon many times, I've been urinated on, I've been peed on, I've handled bats, I've had a lot of fecal material on me. It doesn't mean that they may not have viruses, but the fact of the matter is that I've been there, and that there are many examples of colleagues who've been there, including Bernard Agwanda from National Museum of Kenya. If that were to happen, then we'll all be dead. So the risks are very, very minimum. If you prepare, like if you're handling animals, if you're prepared to have minimal PPE, personal protective equipment, that won't happen.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much for that response, and for giving Stephen Pauls some assurance. There's a comment from Simiyu Wandipa. These activities are very relevant to various aspects of anthropological study. I think there's a comment there. Bozo Change is asking if the slide will be shared. And as I said when we were starting, that we are recording this presentation, and we will later upload in our Nature Kenya YouTube channel, so you can revisit it there.
I just want to say something about Professor Wandipa, because he comes from home. I know he comes from. Yes, I appreciate that comment, and yes, there are lots of information that is not in the public domain, and what we're doing is trying to demystify some of these misinformation about these very, very crucial, critical mammals, because they are mammals. What you've heard from other people saying that they are neither birds nor mammals, is ignorance. I repeat, it's ignorance. People don't understand, because these are typical mammals with mammary glands. They have hair on their body. They have a diaphragm. They give birth. And then so many characters that are unique to mammals. They are the only tree-flying mammals. So we're happy to share that information. And Prof, we can meet in Bogoma. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I see Stephen has raised up his hand. You can unmute and ask your question.
Right. Thank you very much. That's a fascinating talk. My brother, who's on the call, and one of his colleagues, and maybe more, run a conservation program on Mount Elgon. And I don't know, Chris, do you want to say something rather than me say it about what we might or might advise tourists? And yeah, Chris is, so I'll let him talk because he heads it up.
Okay, well, yes, first of all, thank you very much, Paul, for a really interesting and helpful and informative talk. I sit here in the UK I chair the Mount Elgon Foundation that raises funds here in the UK and in the US and Europe for wildlife conservation on Mount Elgon. So I'm very interested indeed in your talk. And we also look to promote tourism on Mount Elgon. So yes, very helpful indeed. And I think on the tourism front, if we are able to progress various plans with tourism, we'd welcome your support, Paul, on how to communicate to the tourists about the caves. You get very, very alarmist misinformation on the internet about Kittim Cave, and that some people say it should be poured full of concrete and all sorts of stupid nonsense. So yes, so I'm very pleased to make your acquaintance, and I'm actually traveling to Kenya on the 18th of June next month, and maybe we'll be able to meet even. But yeah, so that's one side of it. So the tourism side of it. The other side of it, we have 12 community scouts who are patrolling the mountain, gathering conservation and wildlife data. And as part of that, they are recording caves, and we are considering recording additional information on which caves have the fruit bats. And if we are going to do that, it would be useful to coordinate with you. We've learned of at least 47 caves across the mountain, many of which are inhabited or visited by the elephants, and many of which are inhabited by bats, but many of them are not. So I'd be very pleased to, are you based in Nairobi, Paul?
Well, thank you so much, Chris, for this comment, because one, I've only been in two caves in Mount Elgon. So we'll be happy to map those other caves and also identify the species that are there in those caves, but also importantly to talk about bats to those scouts, but also potentially to the tourists who come there. I'm not based in Nairobi. I'm based in Narok, which is a 2.5 hours drive from Nairobi.
Yes.
However, I'll be away in the Congo looking for bats. At the time you are coming on 18th of June, I'll be in the Congo for fieldwork on a different project. But then we can organize some other time if you are around, then we can also catch up. Wherever you'll be, we can meet in Nairobi.
It's not just me. We have a project manager, Elizabeth Matte, based in Nairobi. And then we work very closely with Dr. Emmanuel Ndiema of National Museums of Kenya, who you're probably familiar with. So there are those in Kenya who you could meet whenever you're in Nairobi.
Yeah, I can organize that because I also used to be at National Museum of Kenya as a staffer there. And I know guys at Nature Kenya, except the young guys like Kimngeno here.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can also walk into a Nature Kenya and look for Ndiema, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Well, we'd be pleased to share data with you, with all of these caves that we're aware of across the mountain, many of which have both the fruit and insect-eating bats.
Right.
Which two? You've obviously been to Kittim. Which was the other cave? Makingeni you visited?
Only those two, Makingeni and Kittim in the national park.
Okay, well,
So
close.
I don't know any other caves outside Mount Elgon National Park except those two.
Okay, well, there's even in the park, there's Ingawishwa, which is close to Kittim. That has a big bat colony of fruit bats. And then as you go out of the park, there are many caves with bats.
We will have to sample those. The fruit bats are called Rosetas Egyptiacus.
Yes.
Egyptian rosette, common name.
The Egyptian, yes.
Tumor as well. So those have been implicated with some viruses, yes.
Yeah, they're the ones implicated with the Marburg. I'm aware of that, yes. Good, okay.
Great.
Well,
we will probably Kimngeno can share my email and then we can keep in touch offline of this talk.
Great. Well, I'll share my email as well. Mine is easy, chris@mandafoundation.org.uk, but I'll put that in the chat.
Just share because I may not exactly remember after this.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that discussion. Here's some noise from background. Thank you very much, Chris, for
My pleasure. Thank you for a great talk.
Thank you very much. And just mute this. Yeah. Okay. I think we are good to go. So also I will ask, I will kindly request if Dr. Paul Webala, you can also share your email through the chat box so that for other participants who would like to reach out to you directly, you can they can always
My email is
easily get you.
just Kipngeno,
Yes.
paul.webala@gmail.com. That's the easiest. paul.webala@gmail.com.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. So
Yeah.
yes, still going on from the chat box, I see Brian Otiego and his comment. It is so unfortunate how mankind thrives in hearsays other than scientific findings. Most of the important wildlife species suffer persecution from rumors spread through very influential social media networks. Such kinds of talks from experts could be one of the best approaches. And thank you very much for that. And still, I see the same Brian has raised up his hand. Brian, do you have any question that you want to ask? You can unmute and ask.
Hello, thank you, Richard. And Dr. Webala, thank you for the presentation. Yes, I'm Brian Otiego, and this question is about just the basic understanding of bats. Now, bats they do roost, and then now my question would be that they give birth. So then I've read some information how they give birth, but then this might be rumors as well, but I'd want to understand it from you. How do they give birth to make sure that their pups don't fall down when they're giving birth? Yes, thank you.
Well, these bats are adapted to Brian, and Brian is my student, my former student. These bats, the way they hang upside down is the fact that their knees flex backwards, not frontwards. Now, and they're very clean animals, all right? And because of that, when they give birth, they loosen their hind legs, all right? But when the baby comes out, the hind legs hold the pups, they're called pups, so that they are brought to the teats because they suckle from the teats. So the hind legs are let loose, and when the baby comes out, they're able to hold the baby with the hind legs and the interfemoral membrane, the membrane between the hind legs. And then they bring them up to their teats for suckling. Now, what does happen? Some of the species take them to a roost, okay? And they leave them there. And then that roost, it could be a cave, would be thousands of pups together. So how the mother is able to identify them is another ball game. Then they go out foraging and come back. But some species are able to carry their babies when they are attached to the roost, when they are attached to their teats, and they move around while foraging, while holding onto the teats. So they are able to do that very easily. And then the same way when they let loose their fecal material from the anal opening, they let their hind legs free, loose, and then they excrete. The fecal material comes out, and then they are able to hang upside down or run to first the forelimbs, and then also with the additional hind legs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
Dr.
for that response. Okay, there's another question from Bozo Jenje. In a nutshell, can we conclude that birds, actually the talk is about bats. Can we conclude that bats are safe and cannot infect anyone with viruses?
We can't conclude that because, I repeat, viruses, pathogens emanate from all animals. And therefore, precautions are necessary. It's not just about bats. Bats have been fingered because one, because they are nocturnal. Two, there's little information about them. People fear them because they are nocturnal, they're active at night. the fact of the matter is that there are lots of viruses emanating from wildlife, camels, and not even wildlife, even domestic animals, to humans that spill over. So we can't conclude that, like he's saying, that is a guarantee that we won't get viruses. Viruses are emanating from all wildlife, not just bats. So the fact that the bats are fingered doesn't mean that they are the source of all viruses. Viruses are all over. Even if you swab your hand anytime, you get lots of viruses. Most of the viruses, including coronavirus, are harmless, but precautions are necessary. And the really culprit, the really source of viruses, the really cause of viruses at spillover events is us humans, because we are selfish. We perceive ourselves as dominant over other species. We just one species. We encroach on their habitats. We increase chances of spillover events from wildlife to humans by encroaching on their habitats, by destroying their natural habitats. So the cause of viruses is not animals, not bats. The cause of viruses, the contributor of viruses is us humans. We are the problem.
Okay, thank you for that response. There's one from Paul Rosita. Thank you for this talk, Dr. Paul. As a virologist, I have found your talk interesting and could spend an hour discussing several points you make, not all of which I agree with. I think you'll actually share contacts, and then you can have more discussion and elaboration on this. Jack Amis,
my contact has been shared already by Leo, but I can share it again here in the chat.
Yeah, that will be great.
Yeah.
Yes, as you share, Jakamisi, I think this is an area where our government can invest for more research. Thank you.
For more what?
Research.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a comment.
Unfortunately, research is not a priority for many government in the developing world. So our reactions are always knee-jerk. And not just in the developing world, but also in the West as well. People are focused more on discovering viruses, but not addressing the cause of those viruses. And the cause is actually humans. And then humans, because of habitat destruction of wildlife, which increases contact levels as well as chances of spillover events, but also stressed animals are more likely to shed viruses in the environment because of human activities.
Thank you. Evarasta Sobura,
yes.
thanks.
Thank you, Dr. My question is, why research on bats and not any other animal or any other bird? Thank you.
I'm actually losing you. I can't hear you properly.
Dennis Nyerere, please ask your question.
Yes.
Yes, my question is, Dr. Why research on birds? Bats, I mean bats, and not any other bird.
The problem with Africa, that's a very good question. The problem with Africa is that we want to be high school teachers or primary school teachers. When you go to university, you want to be a lawyer, an engineer, or if you are studying wildlife or nature conservation or natural resources, you want to focus on the big five. Out there, people have specialized. I can study elephants, I can study lions, I can study environment. However, people have specialized out there. And when I studied, when I joined museums as a volunteer, after my undergraduate degree, my interest was primates. But I looked around, there are lots of people studying primates. Okay? So I wanted to cover a niche for myself. But importantly, is that there was nobody studying bats, and I had a training. Most of our people don't have training, basic training, to sample such kind of unique animals. And if you go to National Museum of Kenya, which is like my original area it's like my home, because museum made me what I am. When I went to National Museum of Kenya, there were a lot of people doing different things. But then there was nobody selling bats at that time. And then the fact that they are so diverse, more diverse than the big five, combined actually. Then I thought I had training in Uganda. Then I thought of like, why can't I become an expert in this area? And I began in a very naive way, trapping. That's what we were trained on. Trapping bats. I was beaten thoroughly at the beginning. But now I can talk about bats with a little bit of expertise. So training, interest, but also as a student, somebody who is emerging from an undergraduate, look at areas that there are not lots of people. So that you make yourself indispensable.
Thank you. Thank you for that response. There's one from Everestus. Thanks, Doctor, for the work you are doing, mentoring future bat scientists and conservation leaders. There has been, just a moment. Just a moment. Okay, there has been observed need to uplist or upgrade some species just beside bats. What would you suggest based on your experience will be the best approach given there are no many scientists involved in field research?
Well, the question is not about many scientists, but the question is having people, no, not having people, assessing the requirements for uplisting or downgrading, downlisting to certain levels. Because a lot of species of bats are DD, data deficient, on ICN list. So the requirement is that more studies are required. And having more students studying some species that are not known. For example, there's a species that's only known from a single specimen from Tana River. It's endemic to Kenya. It's endemic to Tana River, called Glaucodicteris kenyacola. It's endemic there, and it's known from one specimen. One specimen. So to upgrade or uplist or download a species, there's need for more information to inform the status of that species. So it's not about recommendations, but it's about training more people, but also having people studying such species that are data deficient. For us to be able to list them appropriately on the ICN, and also to develop a threat status for Kenya, for East Africa, for that species, because some of the species are localized.
Thank you. From Tony Ben Olang, Dr. Thank you for your very informative presentation. And again, Paul has a question here. One question, however, is what advice will you give to wildlife organizations that are hoping to promote bat-focused tourism? Should they tell tourists about the risks or no risks?
First and foremost, that's a very good question. First and foremost, I think, you need to tell them that there's more spectacular wildlife, not just the big five. So first, we need to market them. That's first and foremost. The risks are secondary. If there are any risks, then there's need for precautions. For example, if you're moving at night, anywhere, even in your home, it's recommended, because I teach wildlife, it's recommended that you move around the spotlight and with shoes. If you're in dry areas, you are likely to step on a snake. It's obvious. And then those recommendations are necessary. The point is, tourists go to Morocco or France, not because of the big five. Morocco gets more tourists than we do, probably 3 times than we do, and they have no big five. We talk about diversifying our products, but we don't market. The Kenya Tourism Board well. They are made of, and I dare say, busybodies. They are not really experts in marketing the country. They can market, they talk about wildlife, regular national parks and beaches, but they don't really diversify our products, our language, our culture, our other wildlife, like bats. We don't do that. So the primary thing there is not about the risk, it's about marketing. The risks can be handled if they are any via PPE.
Okay, thank you for the response. Faith, thank you, Dr. Webala, for the presentation. There's a lot of sensational coverage for sure. This reminded me of a hammer-headed bats that were reported some years back. I can't exactly remember where that was, but the community was scared and a number of bats were prosecuted.
Persecuted. Very, very good comment. The
Persecuted, yeah.
hammer-headed bats are found largely in the tropics around the equator, from Kakamega to West Africa, near the equator. These are fruit bats. They do what is known as lecking. I won't go into that. Now, a single bat was found in West Pokot, near Maputan, near Kapenguria. And the villagers vacated the village because they saw the bat as a curse. They saw the bat as dangerous. So they moved out of the village, completely uninformed, completely ignorant. And that led to people moving out of the villages. But whenever they saw the bats, and this is not just about the villagers. Even in academia where I am, people are completely uninformed. People talk about bats as neither mammals nor bats. And then completely, and then for academia, I really empathize with them because it just requires simple reading. You just need to read, and you have that all the information. But we don't have a lot of reading culture. We rather post TikTok, A lot of people posting things on social media, but people don't read. A simple reading, people make comments that I laugh at because people are informed. So what happened in Kapenguria was because of lack of information, and of course, people believe, like where I come from, that if bats are in your homestead, then you are a witch, and that somebody will die. For example, owls. I'm a wildlife person. Owls are depicted as spooky, and if they are okay, if they come and land in your homestead, somebody will die. I do have, where I live, my homestead, I do have owls that have lived there for more than 10 years, and nobody has died. My father died. I don't live with my father. My father died out of old age at 96. But the bats have been, the owls have been there. People believe that the owls, if they are found in a home, somebody will die. That's just myth. As simple as that.
Thank you. From Peter and Jeru, thanks, Dr. Webala, for highlighting on the presence of lots of misleading publicity in various platforms. This is very key in enhancing bat conservation and promotion of legitimate science for policy work. Thank you. And yeah, I think there is one from Joshua Sese. Thank you very much, Doctor, for the awesome presentation. Now, bats were all over the news during the Corona period. Is it true that they were the source?
Oh, that's another question that misinformed, misplaced. There's no direct evidence that SARS-CoV-2 that causes COVID-19 directly came from bats. And some of the videos that were doing rounds on social media were all videos of people eating bats in Asia, in China. That market in Wuhan does not sell bats. However, the SARS-CoV-2 has a relationship with a virus that was found in horseshoe bats. And the evolution was many years ago. The relationship is many centuries ago. So there's not really direct evidence that it actually came from bats. However, the SARS-CoV-2 virus is related to a virus that has also been found in some horseshoe bats in China, in Asia. So if that was the case, then a lot of people will be having coronavirus around here if it really came from bats direct. So there's not really direct evidence, I think evidence, but the relationship, what is for sure is that coronavirus, unlike Donald Trump, has an animal origin via some intermediate host, but there's no direct evidence that indeed it came directly from horseshoe bats.
Thank you for
And there's
expounding.
studies that are required to link bats just like Ebola, because there's a lot of speculation that bats were the source for Ebola, because they are easily sampled. But Ebola has also been found in primates. And people went out when Ebola virus was discovered. They went out on killing sprees of bats, and they never found any bodies in small bats in the Congo, for example. So there's a lot of speculation and no direct scientific evidence that some viruses are directly from bats, except Marburg.
Thank you for that response. Ladies and gentlemen, because of interest of time, we will quickly just randomly read some two more questions. And then for more information, you can always reach out to the speaker. I see his contacts has already been shared in there. And also, if you would like more information, you will see the recording in our YouTube channel. So, okay, there is one from from Michelle Laplace. Hello, Paul. Could you recommend any publication describing the species and population of bats in Kenya? I am looking at producing a documentary on bats for a French TV.
We did produce and you can contact me on my email. We did produce a field guide on bats of Kenya in 2012. Populations, we don't necessarily count bats, and there's no need to count them per se, because if you want to monitor them, you can just assess using various techniques and look for trends, because that's more informative, whether they're declining or reducing or the population is stable. So counting bats is not easy, especially for those colonial reproducing species. There will be millions, and there's various techniques of doing that, but we're not the population per se, cannot estimate. And the estimates are not necessarily accurate, but as long as you have estimates and you follow the same methods over time, then you can predict whether the populations are declining or increasing for management.
Okay, thank you. I see.
So I can share that publication by email if they can contact me.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, Wambui was asking of the scientific name of the bat that is endemic to Tana River, which you've responded perfectly. Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, for the interest of time, I want to bring this session to an end and really thank our speaker today for this very interactive and insightful presentation. This talk has been proudly organized by our very able Mammal Committee, and I would like to invite the chair of the Mammal Committee to come to let us know actually what Mammal Committee does, how they do it, and why they do it, and also how you can be part and parcel of the committee. Leo, if you can hear me kindly, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, I want to thank Dr. Webala for the interesting talk. I think it's been long since we had such an interactive talk, and it just keeps calling for more. I hope we can engage more on bats at some other time. So mine is to welcome all those who are interested in mammals. Like for us with the Mammal Committee, we just offer a platform where we can talk and chat about mammals or collaborate about things to do with mammals. So if you would love to join our mammal committee, we welcome you to join Nature Kenya, and then you can be a member of a committee of your choice. But I trust mammal committee is the best committee for you to join. So if you would want to be a member, I think I can just share quickly our email in the chat, and you can contact us on that email, and we will help you out on being a member of Nature Kenya and you joining our mammal committee. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for turning out for this talk, and I hope to see you again for another talk. Maybe Richard can plan on something with just answer questions, because I saw there were some interesting questions about from virologists and so on. Maybe we can reach some good consensus. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Leo, for telling us about Mammal Committee. So as we end, to Paul Webala, what will be your parting shot to our audience?
It's about me. I think these are very important mammals, and I think we should work towards conserving them by demystifying some of the myths, misinformation, and fallacies about this diverse, second most diverse group of mammals. We can do that by sharing information, but also reaching out to experts, because we consider ourselves as experts, even in a small way. We're able to advise in many cases, and especially journalists. Journalists are so, because what sells is sensational. So what they record and report is always completely off the mark. So if they can reach out to experts, we'll be happy to address some of the concerns, so that people are able to, like what happened in Maracua. Police were wasting their bullets and tear gassing bats at the police station in Maracua. And that's counterproductive, because the bats just move to the nearest trees or chemical spray. So if people can reach out to experts, then some of the issues of helping to evict bats in houses, for example, can be addressed sensitively and comprehensively, rather than people engaging in knee-jerk reactions that somebody, for example, almost died by spraying bats in Bale in Viga County, by spraying them, and he almost died, and the bats didn't move away anyway. So yeah, that's my last comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So from my desk, I wish you all a great weekend ahead, and thank you very much. We will organize another talk, and we'll communicate to you through email and also invite you for the same. Thank you to the Mammal Committee, and thank you to all our participants and to our very able speaker for taking us through. To all of you, asanteni sana, and enjoy your weekend ahead. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.